The average 18-year-old is on pace to spend 93% of their free time looking at their screen. This addiction that loses young people up to 20 hours each week can be traced all the way back to an evil experiment from Sesame Street in the 60s. A group of pioneering television researchers discovered a method for making kids watch more television. And the method that was discovered during their experiments is now, more than 60 years later, still applied to mass-scale new media. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all social media platforms are using it. And even right now, while you're watching this video, they are using the techniques of this old experiment on you. In the past months, there's been a lot of media attention toward a company that created a new method for making kids more addicted to watching videos. Reddit posts started to appear, the New York Times wrote about it, some popular YouTube channels made videos about it, and even an incredibly popular Dutch television show mentioned it.
It's Cocomelon.
All these outlets mention that the company's method is unethical. And with good reason. What could possibly be positive about this? Well, what wasn't mentioned by these sources is that the evil method for making kids addicted to videos was actually not new and wasn't created by this company. It was originally developed by television researchers working on Sesame Street in the 60s. Surprisingly, back then, this method was seen as incredibly innovative and positive. The creators of Sesame Street accomplished something extraordinary. There's good reason for this contrast in perspective. Let me explain. So, the new company that is able to make your kids addicted to videos is called Moonbug Entertainment, the company that creates the show Cocomelon. If you don't know what Cocomelon is, it's an incredibly successful kids show with millions of views that manages to turn kids into zombies unlike any other show. Parents describe the show as baby cocaine or toddler crack because the show makes children unable to take their eyes off the screen. The show is able to accomplish this because it's purposely designed to be highly stimulating, and that's where their method comes into play. Once a month, kids are brought into the London company's office and get to sit on a chair to watch a pilot episode of the animated show on a big TV. Next to the big television, a second smaller television is placed that plays real-world, everyday boring scenes. They named this device the Distractatron. By the evil name, you can tell they are aware of the questionable ethics of their methods. Could have just called it the distractor. While the kid is watching the show, there are 3 adults outside of the room that are examining the kid. Now, anytime the toddler looks away from the show to glimpse at the Distractatron, a note is jotted down. And all these notes are data that allows the creators to make changes to the show with the single purpose of keeping the kids watching as much as possible. The final result of these edited episodes is a kids show that feels like it comes from a bizarre alternate reality. The show uses colors that are almost all at a maximum saturation. The single episodes are highly repetitive, with words appearing 3 times in each sentence, and 96% of the shots are shown for less than 2 seconds. Although this method of testing pilot episodes might sound new, it's actually not. It was actually invented in the 1960s by psychologist Ed Palmer, who was working on Sesame Street. Back then, the reason for creating this invention wasn't to make the kids watch as much as possible, but to understand if kids could learn from TV. Preschoolers are so sophisticated in their viewing behavior that you can determine the stickiness of children's programming by simple observation. It means if you want to know whether and what kids are learning from a TV show, all you have to do is to notice what they are watching. And if you want to know what kids aren't learning, all you have to do is notice what they aren't watching. The setup they used to find out about the parts in the show that kids watched was almost identical to the setup used by Cocomelon. Palmer's innovation was something he called the Distractor, a non-evil sounding version of the Distractatron. He would play an episode of Sesame Street on a television monitor and then run a slideshow on a screen next to it, showing a new slide every 7.5 seconds. Palmer and his assistants would sit slightly to the side with a pencil and paper, quietly noting when the children were watching Sesame Street and when they lost interest and looked at the slideshow. Every time the slide changed, Palmer and his assistants would make a new notation, so that by the end of the show, they had an almost second-by-second account of what parts of the episode being tested managed to hold the viewer's attention. So, both of these shows use the same method for making kids watch TV. However, there is a crucial difference as to why one is evil and the other one is not. Sesame Street's primary goal for using the method was to hold the attention of children to educate them. The entire development of Sesame Street started because of a realization that there was a potential for the use of television in preschool education. Nearly half the nation's school districts do not now have kindergartens, but more households have televisions than bathtubs, telephones, vacuum cleaners, toasters, or a regular daily newspaper. Sesame Street was the first educational program to have a curriculum formulated in day-long seminars with child development experts. And they were also the first to fund extensive research into its effectiveness and outcomes. On the other hand, Cocomelon's goal seems to only be hold the attention of the child as much as possible and profit from that. Now, if you've missed all the news about Cocomelon, it turns out that creating a kids show solely based on holding the attention of the kid is quite bad for the development of the kid. It is so hyper-stimulating that it actually acts as a kind of drug for kids. It overstimulates their brains, it lowers their attention spans. Kids that have a lot of this overstimulating screen time are more prone to speech delays and show reduced overall cognitive development. So, simply put, Sesame Street makes kids smarter, Cocomelon makes kids dumber. Moonbug, the company that produces Cocomelon, was acquired for a reported $3 billion in 2021. Now, what's interesting is that the distractor is not only a technique used for persuading kids. The distractor is one of the earliest forms of captology, the idea of a computer persuading you to change your behavior, belief, or actions. And captology is a key factor behind the success of social media platforms and YouTube. YouTube is Edward Palmer's distractor experiment at an almost unimaginable large scale. YouTube even shows you the same type of data that the researchers were plotting in the 60s. What does this graph remind you of? It's a goddamn retention curve. There is a small difference though. On YouTube, the data does not come from a single child, it comes from millions of people. It's actually a huge difference. YouTube knows what you watch, how long you watch it for, what you watched before, what you watch after, who you are, where you live. It knows this for billions of people, allowing it to sift out the slightest differences in tone and subject. Differences which lose our attention or keep us locked in. YouTube is the perfection of a system of techniques held in common by Sesame Street and Captology for the acquisition of your attention. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video. It took over 20 days to create. A lot of the gear used to make this video was provided by Smallrig. They reached out to this channel after having seen the previous video and they sent some great lights. I've purchased and used Smallrig products before and have received great customer service by them before they collaborated with me, so I'm happily mentioning their brand. They have great products. You can check out the Smallrig products used in this video by clicking on the links in the description. Thanks for watching.